During all those years that I was doing child custody evaluations, the most heart-rending thing about that was how it affected the kids. And you know that separation and divorce is going to affect your kids. We can't get away from that. How can we help them to cope with that? Let's educate ourselves first. And I think this is the number one thing. You need to understand what it is about divorce that affects kids. This is what we have found through the research to be what affects children in a divorce situation. Do everything that you can to minimize the conflict, first of all. And usually that means conflict between the parents about the kids. So you can see that if you get into a custody dispute, wow, that's going to be really tough for your kids. But this is something that parents need to know. So a child's world, when mom and dad are together and everybody's happy at home, is very circumscribed, kind of like this circle, where everything is contained in this tight little unit. And it's not that complicated. When parents separate, that child's world also separates. So now I'm looking at this as two different areas of this child's world. And we could label this mom's world. And we could label this one dad's world. And they are very different. And there's usually a lot of good reasons why these parents aren't together anymore. You know this, right? There's reasons why the separation or the divorce happened. For the child, they don't have all of those same issues and concerns that the parents have. But what they experience is that their world just separated. It's like those two cells that divide in biology, right? But they're not completely separate, because this part in the middle is where the child lives. That child shares elements and components of both of those worlds. Now this is different depending on whatever your particular arrangement is, obviously. But for the most part, this child's world continues to be somewhere in between or shared with both mom's world and dad's world. Now, this helps us to understand why it is so darn important that we minimize the conflict. Let's say that mom's world and dad's world are having this battle with each other. And they're firing away and they're just fighting and conflicted about what? Well, about the child. And that child is right in the middle. Look, where's not a safe place to be right now? In between these two, right? That's why it's so important to minimize the conflict. The best thing you can do to help your child to adjust to a separation or divorce is to take care of that conflict in a way that the child doesn't get caught up in it. And this comes, by the way, from working with hundreds, maybe thousands, I haven't counted, but for years as I did child custody evaluations and I had a practice that was focused on children and families, I have interviewed hundreds of children about divorce and separation and other conflicts that can come up in a family. Here's what they need to know. It is never the child's fault. And with kids in my office, I really emphasize that. I'll say, it is never the child's fault. And then I ask them, how often is it the child's fault? Never. Yes. And sometimes I emphasize that. Never, ever. Okay, you get the picture, right? They need to understand this, because the way that little child's mind is working, they don't always get that. And they think, oh my gosh, if I would have just been a better son, if I would have just been a better daughter, if I were a better boy or a better girl, this wouldn't have happened. Daddy wouldn't have left. Mommy wouldn't have taken us to live with grandma. Whatever, okay? They get this in their little head, and it has nothing to do with why mom and dad are separating. They don't get it. So we need to send that message to them. It is never, ever. But this is coming from years of experience in working with these kinds of situations. Nobody knows exactly why this has happened. Now, is that a little puzzling for you to hear? Connect with this for a minute. Okay? Nobody knows exactly why this has happened. Why is this an important message to children? Because they sometimes think it's their job to figure out why this has happened. And that's why they beat themselves up sometimes, or they try to figure out who's right, daddy or mommy? Who's lying to me, mommy or daddy? Well, I am a professional. I've got a PhD, and I was appointed by the court to do these child custody evaluations. The court wants me to figure all this out. I can't figure it out. I get different stories from mom and dad, and it's not that either of them is right or wrong. They are simply different stories. You follow? So it's not about trying to figure out exactly what happened or who's right or who's wrong. I want to take kids out of the loop as fast as we can from that job. It's not their job to figure out who's right or even what's the real version of what has happened here. Okay? Mom's got her version, dad's got his version, and that's all they are. Now, if you're mom or dad, you already know that you're right about this, don't you? Yeah, you do. It's a kind of destructive pride, really, that we all have as human beings. And you're not wrong for that. I just want you to be open to something, okay? Just because you know you're right about this doesn't mean that this is exactly the way it is. It is simply your perception. That's a whole other conversation. But trust me on this. Nobody knows exactly why this has happened. Let's take the burden off of our children. You know what? They're always relieved when I tell them that. They are always relieved. I tell them, hey, nobody knows exactly why this has happened. And they're like, oh, really? And they're feeling relieved because they were trying to figure out what happened here. Who's responsible? And both sides are giving them totally different stories about that. It creates a conflict of loyalty for them. We just want to relieve them from that. I want to give you a couple of quick do's and don'ts as well. 2 things that you should try to do. Number 1, create the most sane, stable, loving environment you can in your own world. Most of your concerns are going to be about the other world, right? Yeah, but you don't have any control there. So you solve the problems in your own world. You focus on creating the most sane, stable, loving environment that you possibly can in your own world. That's the best thing you can do for your child. Forget about the other world. Now, the other thing that I would encourage you to do should go without saying. It's your number 1 job as a parent. You love your child. No matter what, and even if. Your job is to love them. And that's easy to do. I've reiterated it here because it's so important to their adjustment and to how they handle all the changes that are happening in the family. So create the most sane, stable, loving environment that you can and love your child. Now let's move on to 2 things that you should not do. Do not make promises for the other parent. This is easy to do because sometimes you're trying to compensate for things that you think your kids are missing out on. Do not promise them that the other parent will do this or will do that or whatever. You don't want to be in that position. That takes a lot of pressure off of you as well. Now the second one, do not blame or badmouth the other parent in any way at all. This is going to be hard, okay? Especially because you know that you're right. Here's the thing. I have a lot of parents who tell me in this kind of a circumstance that they don't blame or talk bad about the other parent in front of the children. Okay, thank you for that. That's a good start. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you get your own heart and mind into a position where that's not even your focus, where that's not even an issue. Because as good of an actor as you can be, your kids are going to pick up on it. If you have a bad, negative attitude about that other parent, it's going to come through. So yes, thank you for not doing it in front of the children. How about we not do it at all? Get back to your own integrity. It's like I talked to you about in the to-do section. You create the most sane, stable, loving environment that you possibly can in your own world. So do not make promises for the other parent. And do not blame or badmouth that other parent.